Let's push that idea of connection even further.
Beyond just practicing in your room or with a teacher.
Exactly. We need to talk about the ultimate test of fluency.
The one thing that makes almost every learner sweat.
Talking to complete strangers.
Just hearing that word triggers panic for so many people.
Why would I talk to a stranger? I can barely speak to my friends.
But talking to strangers is actually a secret weapon.
It is arguably the fastest way to build a real-world confidence.
Let's break down the psychology of why this works so well.
First of all, we have the blank slate effect.
I love this concept. Explain how the blank slate works.
When you talk to your friends, they have expectations of you.
They know your personality, your jokes, your normal speaking speed.
If you suddenly start struggling in English, you feel embarrassed.
You feel like you're losing your identity in front of them.
But a stranger doesn't know anything about you.
They don't know if you are naturally shy or naturally outgoing.
They don't know what you sound like in your native language.
To them, you are just a person trying to communicate.
That blank slate completely removes the pressure of expectations.
You can use that English persona we talked about earlier.
You can be a completely different, confident version of yourself.
And if you make a mistake, who cares?
Exactly. You will probably never see that person again.
It is a zero-risk interaction.
So, where do we find these strangers to talk to?
There are two main arenas, the physical world and the digital world.
Let's start with the digital world because it's much more accessible.
You don't need to travel to London to speak to a native.
You just need an internet connection.
Language exchange apps are the most obvious starting point.
Apps like Tandem or Hello Talk are fantastic.
You match with someone who wants to learn your native language.
And in exchange, they help you with your English.
It's a mutual agreement, which makes it much less intimidating.
You both know that you're learners. You're in the same boat.
But sometimes language exchange apps can feel a bit forced.
Like a blind date, right? You're just staring at each other.
So, what are your hobbies? It gets awkward fast.
That brings us to my favorite method, shared interest communities.
This is where you join a group not to learn English, but to do something else.
Using Discord is a perfect example of this.
If you love playing video games, join an international gaming server.
If you love photography, join a camera enthusiast group.
When you enter a voice channel to play a game, the focus isn't on you.
The focus is on the mission, the strategy, the game itself.
You don't have to make awkward small talk.
You just have to communicate to survive the game.
Watch out behind you, or I need some healing over here.
It forces you to use functional, immediate language.
And because your brain is distracted by the game, the anxiety drops.
You forget that you are speaking English, you're just playing.
It is the absolute best way to simulate total immersion from home.
But what about the physical world?
Let's say you're traveling, or you live in a touristy city.
How do you approach a stranger without being weird?
You use a strategy called the hit and run.
The hit and run. It sounds a bit dangerous.
It's completely safe, I promise. It just means keeping it short.
You don't walk up to a stranger and try to have a 30-minute philosophical debate.
You go to a coffee shop and ask the barista a single question.
Excuse me, what is your favorite drink on the menu?
They answer, you say thank you, and the interaction is over.
That is a successful hit and run.
You go to a clothing store and ask, do you have this in a smaller size?
Even if you already know they don't.
Exactly. You are manufacturing an excuse to speak.
You're essentially gamifying your daily life.
Stop someone on the street and ask for directions to a famous landmark.
Even if Google Maps is open in your pocket.
Excuse me, could you point me towards the train station?
They point, they speak a few words of English, you say thanks.
It takes 10 seconds. The anxiety doesn't have time to build up.
And every time you do it, you get a hit of dopamine.
You realize, wow, I spoke, they understood, and nobody died.
Your brain slowly stops associating English with fear.
But we also need to talk about handling rejection.
Because sometimes talking to strangers does go wrong.
What happens if the person doesn't understand you?
Or what if they're just rude and walk away?
This is the greatest fear for most learners.
But we have to look at it objectively.
If someone is rude to you when you ask for directions,
that is about them, not about your English.
Maybe they're late for work. Maybe they had a terrible day.
Maybe they're just a grumpy person in general.
You cannot control other people's reactions.
You can only control your own willingness to try.
If an interaction fails, you just brush it off,
You say to yourself, well, that was a practice run.
and you move on to the next person.
There's actually a psychological exercise called rejection therapy.
You actively try to get rejected to prove that it doesn't hurt you.
You ask a stranger for something ridiculous just to hear the word no.
Once you hear no a few times, the fear completely vanishes.
You realize that a socially awkward moment is not a physical injury.
You will survive. The sun will still rise tomorrow.
Let's pivot to handling the awkward silence.
You're talking to a stranger and suddenly the conversation dies.
You both look at each other. Panic sets in.
Your mind goes completely blank. You forget every English word you ever learned.
How do we escape the awkward silence gracefully?
The best tool you have is the open-ended question.
Never ask questions that can be answered with a simple yes or no.
If you ask, "Do you like this city?" they say yes. Conversation over.
Instead, ask, what has been your favorite part of the city so far?
That forces them to give a longer answer.
It puts the ball back in their court.
While they're answering, you have time to relax and think of your next point.
Another great rescue phrase is, that reminds me of.
Oh, that's a fantastic conversational bridge.
If the conversation dies, you just look around, point at something, and use that phrase.
That music playing reminds me of a concert I went to last year.
Suddenly, you're talking about music. The silence is broken.
It shows that you are actively trying to keep the connection alive.
Now we have to touch on a very important aspect of talking to strangers.
Safety and boundaries, especially online.
Because the internet is a massive place and not everyone is helpful.
When you use language apps, protect your personal information.
You don't need to share your real phone number or your exact location.
Keep the conversation strictly about language and culture.
If someone makes you feel uncomfortable, just hit the block button.
You owe them absolutely nothing.
Don't let a bad experience on an app ruin your motivation.
Just block, report if necessary, and find a new partner.
There are millions of wonderful, patient people who want to help you.
You just have to sift through the sand to find the gold.
And when you find a good conversation partner, hold on to them.
Establish a routine. Hey, let's chat on Discord every Tuesday.
Over time, that stranger becomes a friend.
And that's the ultimate reward of learning a language.
You start by talking to a random avatar on a screen, and a year later, you traveling to another country to visit them.
Language is the vehicle, but human connection is the destination.
Let's give our listeners a challenge for this week.
A practical assignment to put this into action.
If you're playing a multiplayer game this week, turn on your microphone. Don't stay muted. Just say hello to the lobby.
If you're at a coffee shop, ask the barista how their day is going.
Just one tiny interaction with a stranger.
Feel the fear, do it anyway, and see what happens.
You might stumble over your words. You might blush.
But you will walk away feeling incredibly proud of yourself.
Every time you speak to a stranger, you're expanding your comfort zone.
You are proving to yourself that your English is functional in the real world.
Not just in a classroom, not just in a textbook.
But out there in the messy, beautiful reality of human life.
Stop waiting until your English is perfect to start talking.
Perfection doesn't exist. There is only progress.
Start talking today. Make a mess. Laugh about it.
And watch how quickly your fluency skyrockets.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive.
Get out there and talk to some strangers.
Keep pushing your boundaries, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
So you did the challenge. You survived the initial hello.
You asked a stranger a question and you didn't run away.
But what happens next? How do you go beyond the basics?
Because small talk is safe, but it gets boring very quickly.
You can only talk about the weather so many times.
Eventually, you want to have a real, deep conversation.
You want to express your true personality.
But expressing your personality in a second language is really hard.
You feel like your sense of humor is trapped in your native language.
You are naturally funny, but in English, you feel serious and rigid.
This is incredibly common. Let's talk about cultural nuances.
Specifically, let's talk about humor and sarcasm.
Humor is the absolute hardest thing to translate.
Because humor isn't about the words, it's about the timing.
It's about cultural references that you might not know yet.
And when someone tells a joke in English, what do most learners do?
They do the fake laugh.
Yes, the polite, nervous fake laugh.
You have no idea what they said, but you smile and nod.
Everyone has done it, but it actually hurts your progress.
Why? Because it kills the opportunity to learn.
Exactly. If you fake laugh, the native speaker assumes you understood,
They will keep using complex idioms and slang.
and you will just get more and more lost in the conversation.
So, what is the alternative to the fake laugh?
You have to embrace being the curious foreigner.
I love that. Lean into the fact that you're learning.
If they say a joke and you don't get it, just stop them.
Smile and say, wait, I don't know that expression. What does that mean?
Native speakers actually love explaining their own slang.
It makes them feel helpful. It becomes a great conversation starter.
Oh, in my country, we have a similar joke, but it goes like this.
Suddenly, you're having a deep cultural exchange.
And you didn't have to fake anything, you were just honest.
Now, let's raise the difficulty level even higher.
Oh boy, what is harder than understanding jokes?
The ultimate boss battle for any language learner.
The group conversation.
Yes, sitting at a table with 3 or 4 native speakers.
Just the thought of it makes my heart beat faster.
One-on-one conversations are relatively easy to control.
The other person is focused entirely on you.
They adapt their speed, they wait for you to answer.
But in a group, the dynamic changes completely.
Native speakers start talking over each other.
They interrupt, they use half sentences, they speak twice as fast.
They make inside jokes and reference things you've never heard of.
It feels like watching a tennis match on fast forward,
And you are just sitting there, moving your head left and right.
trying desperately to catch a single word.
It is the most exhausting mental workout you can experience.
So, how do we survive the group conversation?
First, you have to accept that you will not understand everything.
Let go of the need for 100% comprehension.
If you try to translate every word in a group setting, you will crash.
Your brain will physically overheat.
Instead of listening to every word, listen for the vibe.
Listen to the tone of voice. Are they arguing? Are they joking?
Watch their body language. Who is leading the conversation?
You can participate non-verbally before you even open your mouth.
Yes, nod your head, maintain eye contact, smile at the right times.
Show them that you are present in the circle.
And when you are ready to speak, use the entry phrases.
Because interrupting native speakers is really intimidating.
You can't just wait for a silent pause.
In some cultures, a silent pause never happens.
You have to create your own pause.
You do this by leaning forward slightly and using a filler phrase,
Say something like, that's interesting because.
or actually adding to what you just said.
Or even if you just say, yeah, absolutely, and.
These phrases act like a turn signal on a car.
You're signaling to the group, hey, I am merging into the conversation.
It gives you a second to gather your thoughts while they stop talking.
Another incredible survival tactic for groups is finding an ally.
Finding your anchor at the table.
Usually, in every group, there's one person who is more empathetic.
The person who notices that you're being quiet.
Focus your eye contact on them when you start speaking.
Speak directly to your ally first, then look at the rest of the group.
It makes the group feel much smaller and less scary.
And when you get completely lost in the topic,
Use the ally to bring you back.
just whisper to them, wait, who are we talking about right now?
There's no shame in asking for a quick summary.
Let's talk about the physical exhaustion of all this.
Oh, the language hangover.
It is a very real biological phenomenon.
If you spend 2 hours at a dinner party speaking English,
When you go home, your brain will feel like a melted candle.
you might actually get a physical headache.
Your jaw might ache from making new phonetic sounds.
You're burning thousands of calories just processing information.
When this happens, do not feel discouraged.
Do not think, I'm so bad at English, I can't even handle a dinner.
Reframe it. Think of it like going to the gym.
If your muscles are sore after lifting weights, that means they're growing.
If your brain is exhausted after an English conversation, you leveled up.
You forced your neural pathways to stretch and adapt.
You should celebrate that headache. It is the feeling of fluency forming.
But you also need to rest.
Yes, cognitive recovery is just as important as the practice.
If you had a massive English immersion day, take a break the next day.
Watch a movie in your native language. Let your brain cool down.
Sleep is actually when the language is stored in your long-term memory.
So many learners try to push too hard, too fast.
They burn out and stop studying entirely for a month.
Consistency is better than intensity.
It's better to be uncomfortable for 10 minutes a day.
Than to be terrified for 3 hours once a month.
Let's bring this back to your identity.
How do you show who you really are in English?
We talked about creating an English persona to protect your confidence.
But eventually, you want your true self to shine through.
You do this by learning vocabulary related to your specific quirks.
Don't just learn generic textbook vocabulary.
If you're a naturally sarcastic person in your native language,
Go out of your way to learn how sarcasm works in English.
study the dry delivery, study the specific sentence structures.
If you're a very empathetic, emotional person,
Learn all the adjectives for feelings beyond just happy and sad.
learn how to say, I feel overwhelmed or I'm thrilled.
Curate your vocabulary to match your soul.
The textbook teaches you how to be a tourist.
You have to teach yourself how to be you.
This is the most beautiful phase of language learning,
It's when the language stops being a subject you study.
and it becomes a tool that you wield.
Like an artist picking up a new type of paintbrush.
The paint is English, but the painting is still your life.
I think that is the perfect mindset to adopt.
When you face a group conversation or a confusing joke,
Remember that you are just learning how to use the brush.
mistakes will happen, the paint will spill.
But every single interaction makes the picture clearer.
Don't hide behind the fake laugh.
Ask questions, be bold, interrupt politely.
Find your ally at the table.
And when you go home with a language hangover,
Be incredibly proud of the hard work you put in today.
fluency is waiting for you just outside your comfort zone.
All you have to do is take one small step over the line.
Keep stepping, keep speaking, and keep exploring.
We will be right here with more strategies next time.
Until then, have a great time out there.
Goodbye and keep up the amazing work.